politics.
But I love political voices.
On Political Voices, we talk politics. In a country of diverse interests, who gets what, when, and how is politics. And this is our business on Political Voices. Nigeria, a country of over 160 million people. Political Voices is gauging the temperature, setting the agenda. Political Voices, exclusively on Dream FM, 9 o'clock in the morning, Monday to Friday.
Good morning and welcome to Political Voices on 92.5 Enugu's Dream FM. Political Voices is a session of comments, interviews and analyses of trending political stories as they affect and shape the world around you. Today is Friday. It is the 11th day of September 2020. This morning on the program, our focus goes to Nigeria's rising debt profile. We look at the issues, the concerns, and the possible way forward. But before we get into all that, there are matters arising from the political space. All right, we'll talk about this one. The PDP is giving conditions for her participation. That's the Kogi State chapter of the People's Democratic Party says it will only participate in the December 12th local government elections if the process will be transparent. The party's position was made known in a statement issued in Lokoja on Thursday. The statement was issued barely 24 hours after the State Executive Council meeting of the party held on Wednesday. We'll leave it there. And just to remind you that we're on a TriCast. On YouTube, it's Dream TV Enugu. Remember to subscribe and turn on notification so you can receive those live videos when they come up. And on Twitter, it's at Dream925FM. You can also follow us on Twitter and turn on notifications. And on Facebook, it's 925 Dream FM. Remember to like our page and turn on notifications for our videos. Stay with us. Political Voices, it's live, and today we're taking a look at Nigeria's rising debt profile. Matter of fact, Nigeria's foreign debt has breached a 15-year trigger. That's Nigeria's external debt has hit a 16-year high of $27 billion as at December 2019, just higher than the 20.08 billion in external debt level as at 2005. There are a lot of other concerns. If you look at the statement issued from the Debt Management Office, we have an economist in the house. He will tell us the implications of all these red flags we're seeing and whether it is going to be this song we should be singing, that is fire on the mountain, run, 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 or we should do boombo and hide. All right. So whatever happens, the analyses will ensue in a matter of minutes because we are joined on the program by Dr. Chumikoba. He is the chairman of Board of Trustees, Amaka Chumikoba Foundation. He is an economist and a public policy analyst. Good morning to you, sir, and thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Alex. It's always my pleasure to be here.
We also have in the studio Chukwuma Ephraim Okenwa, CEO. He is the executive director, Lead Network. Good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning,
Alex. Joining us.
Pleased to be here
on the program.
Thank you.
All right. So, Dr. Chumikoba, is Nigeria done borrowing?
The answer is no.
So, how much more?
We are not done borrowing.
How much more borrowing should we do?
Because naturally, my stand here is that we need to stop borrowing. But given the plan for even 2020, we have not borrowed enough because our budget is largely going to be funded through additional borrowing, both external and domestic. The stimulus plan of 2-point-something trillion is also hinged on additional borrowing. It's going to be funded by borrowing also. So, and you saw that during the first quarter, Nigeria's debt to revenue is about 97%. So what it shows is that the little money we generated on our own was used to pay back service debt. Now the implication is that, and before I proceed, also it's important that I state here also that the current stand of the federal government in removing or deregulating, let me not use the word removal of subsidy, but deregulating of the petroleum sector, the electricity sector, we also, as a result of the conditionalities that have been given to the country by the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, to receive additional loans which they've applied for. So that tells you that we are not done borrowing. And it has their implications, even though I'm sure over time you still ask the question. But this, as a preliminary listening, it has very dear implications, negative implications, both on the local economy, domestic economy, on our own external relations with foreign countries. It also has implications for private businesses, for our well-being, and all the rest of it. The reason being that if you check 2 days ago, the release was that for 6 months, the federal government has spent 968 billion for self-servicing for domestic debts. What that shows is that the domestic debt on its own also is crowding out private sector investment, because what it means is that the federal government and the private businesses are competing for these funds. And there's no how federal government will show interest in this thing and federal and private sector will be able to get loans. So what it means is that most people will prefer to buy bonds. Most banks will prefer to give government payment. So what it means is that even for private sector, when the government keeps saying you want to create jobs, millions of jobs, I keep asking how. With what we are seeing now, how? Agriculture, when you look at that economic sustainability plan, we keep banding out figures and all that. But when you subject those things to critical analysis, find out that it will just go the same way we've had all other development plans that are put without asking the how questions, the when questions, and for whom questions. So what I'm trying to say is that whereas it is not advisable to get more loans, the way the federal government, the way the economy is now, both at the, when you mention that something trillion naira, it's not just the federal government, the subnational debts are also included. So most of the states, it was in this studio I used Enugu as an example, the debt to Enugu as a external debt of Enugu and Anambra. Even when P2B left and reduced the debt, now that within the last 7 years or 7 years old and now has been there, it has accumulated public debt of Anambra State. But these things are not, people are not seeing it, because most times, even when budgets are presented, these things are silent or people are not interested. So while the federal government debts are increasing, the subnational debts are also increasing. So it's a really big issue, but in summary, government will continue to accumulate debt except we do the needful.
All right, then. Chukwuma from Okenwa, you've heard it that the states are also borrowing. And let me ask you the question straight up. What are the states doing with the money they're borrowing?
Supposedly, in most cases, when states want to borrow, it is much touted that it's for capital investments in terms of roads, infrastructure, critical infrastructure, health, and all the rest. But in most cases, we want to ask, where are the roads? Where are those critical infrastructures? You understand? Rather, we could just see that more of reinvestment into recurrent expenditures. You understand? Borrowing to maybe meet up with the cost of governance and all the rest. Because sometimes we see leaders tell citizens to apply belt tightening measures, whereas on their own part, you don't see less of escorts. You understand? You don't see less of anything in terms of the cost of governance. So most of the time, we see those funds diverted. Or sometimes when it is maybe being quoted that is used for road, right? Even though the quotes on those roads are far higher than what even countries like America, Singapore, will use on a kilometer of road. But guess what? The roads are not sustainable. sometimes 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. And of course, civil engineers know that, in awarding contracts for road, whoever is awarding the contract will tell you the number of years he has in mind. You understand? So sometimes, so what that means is that a governor can come up and say, okay, well, the road I have in mind is 3 years road, 4 years road, maybe the one that will last as long as I'm governor. Once I'm there, whatever thing that happens to the road, it doesn't really matter. You understand? So these are issues that we need to, not just building those roads in some cases, but how sustainable are those infrastructures?
Dr. Chunkoba, the country keeps borrowing, but talk to us about how this continuous borrowing is affecting the economy. I'm sure it has some sort of effect, and I need you to discuss it in two fronts: how it's affecting the economy positively and how it's affecting it negatively.
Naturally, if loans are tied to capital projects, I don't mean capital projects like buying of computers. In Nigeria, we classify even computers as capital projects. So, but rare capital projects, both basic infrastructures and social sectors and all that, naturally, it will have a multiplier effect, positive multiplier effect on the economy. But that's not what we are seeing these days. Now, let me, before I proceed with the answer to that question, it's important also to recognize that the current debt profile, both at the national and subnational level, does not include the contingent liabilities. And the contingent liabilities are so huge that when you bring them into the pool, we'll be talking something very... Now, when I mean contingent liabilities, I mean debts that are old contractors that have executed projects. I mean salaries that are old. I mean pensions that are old, and things like that. You can imagine how huge that is. And sometimes some state governments and federal government may contract a consultant, a contractor to do a work when they know they won't pay. Where I worked before, we did a job for federal governments, a job of about 50-something million naira. This we want to do, and we used our own funds to execute it. This thing happened in 2013. And this is 7 years. That money was never paid, and it will never be paid. That's 50-something million for a small firm. So you can imagine what they owe other people. So having said that, but in responding to your question, if these debts are accrued, are taken for basic infrastructure, capital projects that will open up the economy, it would have been good. But the problem is that most of these loans, even when they say that it's for capital projects, are largely used to fund consumption. And you can see that from even the budget. If you do budget analysis and you see how much the government is projecting as their revenue, how much they are projecting as recurrent expenditure, how much they are projecting as capital expenditure and statutory transfers, you see that the budget deficit vis-a-vis the amount they are going to borrow shows that a larger chunk of the money they are going to accrue as public debt is already being used to fund those consumption. And in most cases in Nigeria, will make unrealistic revenue projections. Sometimes, oil is way more than oil. Sometimes you see that they will say they will produce 2.1 barrels of oil, when in the last 5 years you've not been able to produce up to 1.7. You project oil price and all the rest of it. So what it shows is that from day one, and that is when you talk about budget credibility also, you find out that from day one we are saying what we know we cannot do. So the loans we take, we use to do certain things. So the negative implication is that we'll keep going down the drain on the economy because we are not spending money on those things that will jumpstart the economy and sustain the economy. So on the economic side, nothing is happening. The second aspect, if you check our public debt profile, over 65% of our public debt is domestic debt. And domestic debt has a crowding out effect on domestic production. Because when you are doing that, you are denying private investments and all that the opportunity to also draw funds to make the real investments in the system. So on twin areas, we have problem. Thirdly, yes, the government has always said that we are servicing our debts, and we see they are servicing the debt. But how sustainable is this? So on the external angle, both on the political front, you lose credibility. And that is where Nigeria has gotten to now. Nigeria has lost credibility in the international community, and that is why we are depending more on Chinese loan. Because it's only China that will give you such loan. We can't go abroad now to sell bond. Because they are not sure of your economy. There are a lot of volatility, exchange rate uncertainty, and all the rest of it, or insecurity. So if I put in my money, you invest your money where you are sure you'll be able to take your money back anytime you want it. So when you are not sure you do that, you won't get it. And that is why the International Monetary Fund and World Bank are saying, we can't give you money. I'll borrow People's Club. No. It's like when people go to borrow money those days from the bank, say we want to do project, build farms. Then you gotta start buying BMW, start throwing party. That is what Nigeria has been doing over the years. And if you recall, when Obasanjo was going for debt forgiveness, part of the reasons why most of the Paris Club said they will not forgive this debt is because they said all the loans, most of the loans the country took, went into private pockets, and we are used to throw parties and all that stuff. So why will you give a man who would come to you and say, I want money to start a business, and he ended up throwing parties, sleeping in hotels? If he comes tomorrow, will you give him money? So you need credibility politically. Socially also, we are suffering it because when these things are not done, our health sector is in comatose. The education sector is in comatose. Public utilities are non-existent. So it has both direct and indirect effects on the general economy and well-being of the people. A lot of people are dying every day. It was recently that they released this that Nigeria, we are becoming headquarters of everything. That under 5 debt, Nigeria now is the capital of the under 5 debt. So you are the world capital of poverty. You are the world capital of under 5 debt. Misery index rate is high. Food poor is high. So everything in Nigeria is nosediving on the negative inflation as a result of partly the rising public debt are not used for productive ventures. Go and read this economic sustainability plan, part of which is the 774. Part of the money we are borrowing, 54 billion, is for 774,000 jobs. I've come here always to say it. 774,000 jobs for 3 months is not sustainable. It will create bigger problem for the economy, for the people also.
All right then, Chukuma Ephraim Okenwa, there is a fundamental problem, and some analysts argue that the reason why Nigeria is taking these loans and will have nothing to show for it is the politics that interferes with governance. Talk to us about that. Do you toe that line?
Yeah, I do, because visibly over the years there have not been that clear demonstration of political will towards the people and the nation. Thinking big about the nation rather than thinking big about ourselves, maybe as the political leaders. You see like diversion of the funds, and even when there are like a kind of eyebrows raised in some regard, like in 2017, when like the account was done, you understand, and it was discovered that about 300 billion was not accounted for. And Serap also raised an eyebrow about that in recent time, and nobody said anything about that. Don't forget, most of these funds we are talking about are borrowed funds. So how can someone that borrowed a fund that ought to be more judicious, you are behaving as if to say like you are even among the nations that are lending to other nations. Even nations that give those funds, they are not as careless as this. You understand? Like the very much we see like from our politicians, the way they do their things. Like I was talking to someone recently, and I said, why is it like maybe when you see our leaders like want to get like fleet of cars like we saw in recent time, the National Assembly, you understand? Making orders of 2020 model. Why do you want to drive the latest model of a car when your nation, you understand, is not even living in the 2020 in terms of, being compliant with the trends, you understand? Some other nations are already thinking of like, where do we take education beyond, this is the basic foundation, beyond the basic superstructure. But we are even yet to get it right. We are still wondering what is really the essence of education. And like when some young men, started the advocacy that school is scam in Nigeria. Because how do you get to fix that someone could graduate as an electrical engineer, and if there is any issue that has to do with electricity, he has to reach out to an electrician to help fix that. So much investment has not been done on the real things. And oftentimes I've also queried, because when we talk about this infrastructure, I don't want just us to limit it to just the physical, like he also identified for the social sector in terms of health and education. And as a matter of fact, over the time, the way we think tend to suggest that perhaps we don't even see education as something that is worth investing into. Because for crying out loud, UNESCO recommends 26% investment in education. But over the years, it's just been 4 to 6%, you understand? And you keep wondering, do we really believe that education is the bedrock for national development? And then over the time also, like in terms of all the debts we keep collecting. If you collect debt to invest into capital expenditures, which is supposed to be a kickback to the nation, there should be some form of return on investment. After several years, why do we see ourselves, and interestingly, not just for the debts, negotiating for greater aids? And I tell you that some of these figures we keep seeing, you understand, of maybe like just he cited in the instance of like those that are under 5 years, mortality rate so high, and the world poverty capital and all the rest. If you know how some of these statistics are gathered, you know that Nigerian key players could also, they could actually influence like some of these figures to ensure they get the aid, you understand? It's just like what happens like sometimes with NGOs, maybe where you go to a particular locality, maybe you want to attract funds for Enugu State, where people are suffering, probably drinking water from, you understand? And you picture that and create an impression that this is the way Enugu look like. So it's very, really, disgraceful that a nation, over the years, after 60 years, where several nations like, Germany, 20 years after, you understand, the impact of one, then got some aids from America, same with Singapore. 20 years after, they started giving aids to other nations. We still depend on both aids, negotiating for larger ones, and at the same time, debt. And what is even very interesting is that instead of the debt helping us to be more responsible, to build a more viable economy, it should naturally be on the decline. Rather, we see it skyrocketing, and power has not been fixed. The roads are still debt trap. You understand? The airport that was launched recently in Enugu, uncompleted, and so many other things, you understand, all across. And even the ones that come up, the problem has always been on the sustainability. How long are those projects going to last? Only time will tell.
Dr. Shunkoba, how is Nigeria servicing all the debts that has been accumulated? Because a lot of people are worrying that it does appear that much of the money, you look at the budget, it looks like the amount for debt servicing far outweighs certain key sectors. Talk to us about the implications of moving a lot of money just for debt servicing.
You asked two questions. How are we servicing the debt?
Yes, please.
Let me also begin by saying that, the argument has been that Nigeria's debt to GDP ratio is still sustainable because it's still hovering between 22 to 27. But my argument has always been that GDP does not pay debt. It's revenue that pays debt. So we should always be looking at debt service to revenue ratio. And the World Bank threshold for debt to revenue ratio is 22.5%. That is the maximum it should be. Unfortunately, Nigeria's debt to GDP ratio hovers between 66 to 80. In January, first quarter 2020, it's 97. It was 97. So what it shows is that almost all the money, the little money we are generating, is being used to service debts. So what you use now to pay your salaries and all those things is still accumulation of more debts. So what will happen over time is that, and it's happening, is that we'll go into what we call fiscal crisis or fiscal cliff, where you bend on your knees now and unable to do anything. Where, the Bible, I'm sure I'm permitted to say something about it, even though I don't have it offered, where it says that the borrower is subject to the lender. So what it means is that also a time will come when, and it's happening, because if it's not happening, why would another country be dictating to us how to run the economy? So what it means is that you lose your sovereignty in quotes, because you are not able to dictate what happens. Another country will tell you have to do it this way, you have to do it, and you keep doing it like zombie, whether it is good for your people or not. So the implications of what is happening is that as you keep accumulating debts and keep increasing your debt service, you have less funds to do the critical basic things that you need to do. That is where we are. Secondly also is that when you keep accumulating debt also, I've said about the cardinal effect both on the domestic distance. The other implication is that you lose credibility. When you talk about this credibility issue, we look at it on a Beverly. Have you asked yourself why, when we go abroad, do you think it's just corruption on our citizens? Part of the corruption that they cite abroad is the corruption of our inability to do basic things. We have physical infrastructure, you have social infrastructure. How many of our teachers are trained? Let me use that. How many of our doctors are getting retrained always? I don't know if you're getting what I'm saying. Have you computed how much money we are spending traveling abroad on medical tourism? And these are the things people look at. So when you keep spending your money on servicing debts, you have less funds to meet basic needs here. And when you are unable to meet those basic needs, you create all manner of problems. Nigeria is suffering all manner of problems because we do not have enough funds to do a lot of things. And most of the funds we have are in private pockets. I was arguing with CEO one day off here. He said, Nigeria is a very rich country. I said, no. I said, Nigeria is a very poor country. And we have not ended that conversation. It makes no sense that you have a lot of natural resources. You are endowed. When you cannot activate those things on your own, converting them to critical instruments or investments to jumpstart your economy. It's like when they say knowledge is power. I said no. Knowledge is not power. But the application of knowledge is what is power. I got them before, no be property. That you have these things that you are not utilizing them to achieve the desired goals. You don't have it. So what it means is that the excess borrowing and servicing of the debt is taking us even more back to before civilization. And that is why as a person, I love this country. But Nigeria is underdeveloping. Nigeria is not a developing economy. Nigeria is an underdeveloping economy. And we need to accept it, and that is the reality.
All right, then. This is Political Voices. Still, let me just get the thoughts of CEO before we get to the phone lines. I'm sure you want to add something.
Particularly in that aspect of whether Nigeria is a wealthy nation. Let me respond shortly with respect to that. This nation is greatly endowed, and sometimes also I begin to feel that it's possible that while we don't have like the refineries working, right, and the full utilization of our mineral resources is because of some conflicting interest. And I want to cite two instances. Like recently, we were told that All the 4 refineries are no longer functioning due to vandalism. And I begin to wonder what's the role of the Nigeria Civil Defense and some other security agencies that ought to protect that, you understand? And then we are now told by 2021 it will be a one-man show, you understand? But interestingly, like there is one minister that this nation must celebrate at all time. He did what nobody has done in this nation, and that is Alhaji Bawa, you understand, the former Minister of Steel and Mines. He unveiled what no person have dared to do in that ministry. You know, what he can show like 3 years of stewardship, you understand. They kind of audited the account of Ministry of Mines and discovered that in 3 years, through illegal smuggling of gold out of the country from the north, about 355 billion was lost, and this did not reflect in our GDP. Till date, nobody is talking about that. If it is the oil from the south, it is Commonwealth. If it is about the gold from the north, it is their wealth. I think we should begin to have conversations like this. We mustn't sweep it under the carpet.
All right, then. This is Political Voices on 92.5 Enugu's Dream FM. This morning, we're taking a look at Nigeria's rising debt profile, the issues and concerns, and possible way forward. In the studio this morning is Dr. Chunwikoba and Chukuma Ephraim Okenwa. We'll open the phone lines now for you to call us. We'll have 0809888925, and we also have 08112925 You can send us a WhatsApp message on 09020020 and we can take messages from our social media on Facebook 925 Dream FM, on Twitter. Hello, good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, 9-man time club about you.
You're welcome.
Yes, since 1999, started this level of democracy in Nigeria. Not going forward, going backward. Because all our parties are crippled. Nobody's talking about this. How can we survive the journey without putting a start rate? Look at the Kaladu was abandoned since ever. Look at the help of that's the one I know within the area. It's like, how can we survive the economy? Government, if they want to survive the economy of the nation, every state is supposed to have up to 3 or 4 factories producing one thing to the other so that people will be working. So people, they will carry people along. Okay, look at what our president said in the morning. He's going to power 130 million people in Nigeria. On which step? Tell us the step. It is how work and number they do why. Since the starting of this very regime, we never had any positive result on them. We have our president, one person, commander of the chief of everything in the whole country. We have father, one person will be on that task forum, not 2 people. Help us for this very nation. Maybe there will be dancing on one thing. Borrowing money, what are you borrowing money for?
All right.
We have oil in this very country.
Nice small town cry. Thank you. Thank you. He asked Okwaka Namagajulu Umuahan. Someone says that Nama rides on a truck to Umuahan. All right. Hello. Good morning. Hello. Good morning.
Alex, good morning.
What's the name and location?
Hello, Alex. Good morning.
Good morning. I can hear you. What's your name and
right.
location?
Good morning to the guests in the studio. This is Nama calling from Soka.
Go ahead and make your contribution.
Can I go on?
Please go ahead.
All right. Just like I said yesterday, governance is not rocket science. Personally, I saw this situation we're going through now coming. I really saw it coming, and many Nigerians saw it coming. When this administration came on board and they started shuttling for ministers and special advisors, and we all saw them, going for, I wouldn't call anybody mediocre, but they were not going for the best hands. Some of us started complaining that they should go for the best hands because the economy is not something anybody can do. They needed experts. But they started going for political partners, their political party members as ministers, as special advisors. Look at what is going on now. Do you need a prophet to tell you that there is nothing the government can do about Nigeria economy? Look at the rising debt profile. Look at the state of the economy. no economic blueprint. They came on board. There was no practical economic blueprint. What can they make out of this whole situation? So what I'm trying to say is this. We Nigerians, we have to exercise patience till next administration, and it is a lesson to each and every one of us. Thank you so much, Alex.
Thank you. Thank you for your contribution. On Facebook, all right. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
What's the name and location?
I'm fine, calling from India.
I don't know why you're sounding this low. We are really on a slightly higher tempo than you're dropping us to. Is there a problem?
Hello.
All right, then. I think you have to call us back. Let's take a message from Facebook. Dontob Okonkwo says, when will our leaders repent and start being honest to us? Why will our leaders keep on deceiving us with borrowing where we are not seeing what they're doing with the money they are borrowing? And our comrade Jeremiah Okore says, what is the update on the controversial Chinese loan? Was it suspended or procured? That's another question. Ovuna Dekland says, my take is that government will not stop borrowing until those at the helm of affairs organize and reorganize themselves by putting their interests first. And Chigozie Udeji says, where did we spend all this money and how? Nigeria's condition is getting worse every day. Where are we heading to? What is the future for the youths? All right, so that's all right, we'll take more calls now. Hello, good morning.
Hello?
Hello, what's your name and location?
Hello, Alex.
Hello, I can hear you. What's your name and location?
Hello?
All right, then. He obviously can't hear me. Let's take some more calls now. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning. All right, then. Let's read some messages from WhatsApp. This one says, okay. We are the architects of our own problems. Succinctly put, I don't want to talk much on this topical issue or ramble at length, but the way I see it, let cost of governance be reduced considerably and social welfare package be more amenable to the poor masses, constituting more than 80% of the population, and a ration of 10.2 vis-a-vis the richest instead of the crumbs trickling. God help us. Okay, then. Let's take some more messages on WhatsApp. This one says, Nigeria's debt are not sustainable because those loans gotten are not projected towards quality projects, execution, embezzlement by the political gladiators, etc. Kaka from Lagos Street, Benue State. Okay, then. Hello.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning to you. What's your name?
My name is Cedric. I'm calling from No Market.
You're welcome.
Just call in to appreciate your guest. They're making a point. Actually, in terms of Nigerian issue of borrowing, it has become a culture to Nigeria to borrow from the Chinese country and not asking them how the Chinese country are surviving. Because you can't tell me, because China, I see China as the second colonization of Nigeria. But very soon we are going to become to use their currency in Nigeria. Because very soon we are going to learn their languages. So that's why Nigeria is the only country that always borrow money to pay salary. So how can we survive all this mess? And all this borrowing, there is no means we can easily generate our own money to pay. How is it how we are going to survive? It is a mess. Remember, Solid FM. No, Dream FM, I mean.
All right, then. 92.5 Enugu's Dream FM, Political Voices.
Good morning,
Hello, good morning to you. What's your name and location?
Yeah, my name is Romanus. I am calling from Asuka.
Go ahead and make a contribution.
Yeah, the problem we have in this country is that any father who refuses to work for his children to eat will end up borrowing money from other people for his children to feed. That is what our leaders are. They don't want to work. You see now they are trying to privatize everything into the private hand, and they will just be wearing agbada in their office, waiting for the money to come in bulk. They are not working. They're supposed to remove that agbada and put short knicker and enter farm, enter into the industry and work for this country to eat. I don't know what they are doing there. One person will use a cloth about 5 inches person will use to sew a cloth. Only one person will use to sew a cloth and be putting it going up and down without working. It's not done in any other development. There's a project in the UNN here. They started when they were building it. The Oyibo there, the main engineer there, will come out and pull off, clamp the up, will start turning slate and some of our people, even that is working with him, they will put a suit and a tie, calling themselves their supervisor. While the main man is clamping up, putting concrete inside the
All
so
right.
our people are not, our leaders
Thank
are
you.
not working. They want to sell
Thank you.
everything out.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Alex.
What's your name and location?
Please, with all due respect, my name is Kevin Bami.
You're welcome.
Good morning to the analyst in the studio.
Yeah, good morning.
Yes, Mr. Alex, let me tell you this. Even God himself condemned borrowing. Because in the book of Proverbs, I think so, I says borrowing is sorrowing. And what the current leaders are doing, if care is not taken, if this continue, I think one day they will sell off this country. It is quite unfortunate, very, very disheartening that we are having this kind of leadership that we are having in this present administration. The Ninth Assembly has disappointed Nigeria. They are there for themselves. They will borrow and share the money. What do they do with the money? Where is the result of the borrowing? This is so terrible. This current administration, I think this is the worst administration that I've ever had. I stand on my word. It is terrible, and this has to change. Why? We are all Nigerians, and we also have the same how do I call it? The same authority or whatever that the leaders have. We the citizens also have the same thing. We also have it. It is bad of our leaders. What they are doing, God is watching them. If they don't change, God will judge them.
Kulu temper. Kulu temper. That's Labaja's song. Hello.
Hello, Alex.
Good morning to you.
Please, Alex, I must make this passionate appeal. Please, this is Nana back on the line, please. Alex, please, after my first contribution, I felt I should please appeal passionately to the federal government led of Mohammed Buhari, please to change his cabinet. Please let him shuttle for experts to come on board and rescue Nigeria economy. Please, economy is not a magic. We need best hands. Let them bring on board best hands to rescue Nigeria economy because things are really going out of control. Thank you so much.
All right, then. Let's take one or two more messages on WhatsApp. Hardly can any nation live and sustain development plans without borrowing. Regrettably, our consumption pattern is anti-development. Cost of governance is very high, and our leaders only borrow to maintain all of that. Kelechi Vision from UNN. And there's this one there. I think we should talk a little more in the studio because a few other issues came up. I'll start with you, Dr. Chumukoba. Is it possible that Nigeria's economy is not being properly managed? Is it just possible?
Well, I'm sure you know the answer, but let me also answer it. The economy is not being managed properly. It has never been managed properly. But the management is getting worse by the day instead of improving. But it's important that I also make this clarification. When I listen to the calls here, every time we all look at the national, that's the president, Buhari. I made it very clear here that the rising public debt is not just the national debt. It's also about subnational debt, the state debts. But unfortunately, most of us find it so difficult to discuss what is happening at the state level. Nigeria is a federalism that runs on fiscal federalism. If the states are not doing well, it also has its implications on overall national economy. And the state, in fact, let me be very honest with you here. There seems to be more organization, prudence at the national level than we've seen at the state level. The state, because our people believe in, he's doing well. is our own and all that. The state governors or the state government, as it were, not just state governors, because we have the legislator and all the rest of it all, live as though it doesn't concern them. The expenses we see happening at the federal government is even worse here. At the state level, you see a lot of schools that students are learning under trees. But I can assure you there's no federal government college that people are learning under trees. But it's happening at the state level, and people are not talking. Very soon, there's a study the Guardian will publish. I'm sure they're working on it. How many of the state governments, I'm talking about the Southeast now, are accessing the UBEC funds? Is it most of them are not accessing it because they don't have the capacity to adhere to the rules of the fund? And that is what is happening in all over the day. There are a lot of counterpart funding that is existing at the national level. But most states are not able to access it because they are fiscally rascal. There's fiscal rascality at the subnational level. At the local government level, what is happening with all the money the states are getting from the federation account and IGR? Have we asked such questions? But in answering your question, the economy has not been managed well. I've always said it here. We attend to issues, structural issues, using interventionist approach, and it can never work. Until we come back to ask ourselves, what are our real problems? How do we solve these problems with a good development plan that is well costed, not blown, bloated costing, with people who have the passion to do it. When you say you still have the leaders that are thinking more about themselves. Somebody said that when they start thinking about themselves, they do well. No, they are thinking more about themselves now. That is why they will go and borrow funds and put it back inside their pockets. How many of their children are schooling here? When they get sick, do they go to hospital here? Some of them that died during coronavirus was because they couldn't travel abroad. It was the SGF that said that he didn't know that the rot in the health sector is as huge as it was. Yet, he's been in this country for years. He's an AGF and he didn't know that. Most governors started working on these hospitals in their states because they were afraid if anything happens to them, if those places are not right, they will die. It was a governor in this country, especially Abia State. He was sick. He left Abia State and went to Abuja to be treated. When he made his video to see him, I thank God for healing him. And I asked him a question. I said, is it not shameful that as a state governor you were sick? All the noise you've been making all over the place that you are, the health sector in Abia is working well. You didn't find it deemed necessary to subject yourself to the facilities in those places. So what I'm trying to say that they are not interested about what is happening. They are more interested in them. So, and the issue is that we give those without the requisite skills, without the capacity, without the passion to bring about the change governance. Most of the people that are governors, that are presidents, that are ministers are not supposed to be there because they don't have the capacity first. They don't have the passion. But what happens here is Ojebego, Mawro, no Tunusimena, and not the rest of it.
Chukwuma Ifrom Okenwa, I asked you a question earlier in the program about the effect of politics on governance. So we are coming full circle to that. So if we continue this way, it means that we are not going to see any change.
There is a problem.
But then I will have to ask you, what are we supposed to do, or what's supposed to happen for us to see a positive change?
First, any issue about the economy, whether you are looking at a private firm or you're looking at a country, ought to be handled like pure business. But then in our own Nigerian setting, and many people have queried, what business does government have in business? And we've asked that question simply because we do not really run Nigeria as leaders like a business. Because if you see it as a business, then certainly the first thing, do you know that to start with, the civil service is overstaffed? The government have like people in some ministries that are not productive, people that if they don't show up for three months, nobody will notice the absence. If those things were to be private business, would you really like acquire as much as possible? It's not sustainable. And then the economic blueprint that the current administration have, it's not sustainable and not good enough. Such that Bill Gates, when he visited the country then, he is one of the major aid givers to Nigeria. But something funny happened, and that still underscores the importance of your question. How do we separate politics, from, governance? And you come to think about it, that when he looked at it and he said, well, this isn't good. There is a need to rework this. And the next thing was that the PDP brought Bill Gates, you understand, probably sponsored him to come and make that comment. That was the accusation that came from APC. And I was wondering who on earth is going to fund a whole Bill Gates, you understand, to come and make that. But you gave him the economic blueprint to assess, and he looked at it and felt it was not good enough. So why the bias from you?
All right, then. Just before we go finally, let me ask Dr. Chimukoba, what is the alternative to borrowing? Because we've been talking about borrowing and borrowing. What should we do instead of borrowing?
Well, in addition to what CEO just stated here, because you raise money through two means. First is to reduce the cost of governance. The other one is to increase your revenue. So in addition to the things I said about reducing the cost of governance, we should go the route of PPP. PPP will enable us, first of all, what it will do is that it will become a collective ownership of assets and all that, where everybody gets involved. You have the funding, you have the expertise. You do it at a cheaper cost, it's maintained at a cheaper cost, it lasts longer. So we need to leave borrowing money and mobilize resources within locally and externally. If I know I'm a co-owner of a thing, I put more interest, I put more, and I lose politics a lot. So we need to go that route.
All right, and thank you so much, Dr. Chimukoba, Chairman, Board of Trustees, Amaka Chimukoba Foundation. He's an economist and public policy analyst, and Chukuma Ifrumokenwa, Executive Director, Lead Network. Thank you for your time on the program. Much, and special thanks to my production assistant, Lutana Okereke, and my producer, Okeodogu. Political Voices returns on Monday. We are adjourning for the week. We'll be back on Monday same time. And the Dream FM News at 10 comes up at the next hour. Good morning.
Wealthy life. And to sustain a wealthy life, you need a reliable partner. A partner that guides